In this video, I'm going to be comparing the Shaggy Dog movies. There's two of those to the Extraction movies. There's also only two of them. When it comes to the highest score for each franchise, Extraction 2, that came out last year, I'm pretty sure, has a 79%. The original Shaggy Dog from 1959 is a 70%. When you look at lowest score, the 2006 version of Shaggy Dog, which actually has Robert Downey Jr. in it, only has a 26%. The first Extraction, on the other hand, has a 67%. When you look at average score, Extraction has an average of 73. Shaggy Dog has an average of 48. Then when you look at gap between lowest and highest score, you got a gap of 44 in the case of Shaggy Dog and a gap of only 12 in the case of Extraction. So Extraction has won every round so far. It's going to win no matter what. And in this case, I'm actually going to agree and also say that I prefer the Extraction franchise. I haven't actually seen any of these movies, to be clear, but Shaggy Dog just feels a bit more familiar. Not that it's a rehash of one series of movies in particular. I wouldn't phrase it that way. I mean, admittedly, the idea that you have this guy who suddenly can turn into a dog and then turn back into a human is interesting, I would say. But there are other movies that are about humans and dogs. What's interesting about Extraction is these two movies are technically based off of a comic book, but they're not actually sci-fi, fantasy, or horror. They're actually pure action movies. They're old school action movies like John Wick or Equalizer, for example. That's interesting because the fact is nowadays we're not getting as many straightforward action movies as we used to back in the 90s. That genre is just not as prolific as it used to be. So you have just a few of these pure old school action movies that are coming out. I think it's interesting that both Extraction movies, technically speaking, are comic book movies, but you don't really think of them as comic book movies because a lot of the time, not all the time, comic book movies tend to be sci-fi, fantasy, or horror. They tend to be in that ballpark. They don't tend to be old school action movies, which is what Extraction is. So I think that makes Extraction stand out a bit more, makes it more memorable, a bit more interesting. So I'm gonna choose it over Shaggy Dog. I've seen both those movies and I had a good time with both of them. I had fun with both of them, but not as interesting as Extraction. So Extraction's won every round. It's going to be winning here. And that'll be it for now.